Hello again, readers, and welcome to the next installment of Graham Bradley Reads. First off, I want to say thank you to everyone who has subscribed. You've gotten me over 800, and that number has held strong for the last month. Really got my sights set on hitting that 1,000 mark because that unlocks a couple of cool features on YouTube. I get to do community posts. That'll be short text-based posts that'll appear in your news feed. Where I can do polls, I can get some quick text feedback from you without having to do, an entire video that you'd have to sit through. You could just read and leave a comment like a blog or another media outlet. In the meantime, go ahead and give this video a like if you would, and if you're new to the channel, please subscribe and share it with your friends. So the book that I'm sharing with you today is by one of my favorite authors, and it was one of my favorite reads of 2013 when I first went through it, and that is Woods Runner by Gary Paulsen. It is an exciting blend of nonfiction as well as a narrative. So far on this channel, I've stuck to historical nonfiction reviews, with the exception of the King Raven trilogy, which had a strong historical element to it. This book is kind of unique in the sense that it's mostly about the narrative, but in between the different chapters, he'll give you a little bit here that kind of shows you some of the historical facts of what was going on, sort of explaining some of the decisions that he made in the storytelling. This is the same author who wrote Hatchet, and he's one of my favorites, and I can't recommend his work highly enough. He talks about civilian deaths, the nature of spycraft, the nature of the warcraft, and so much more that not only helps to tell an interesting story on its own, but illuminates the realities of 18th century North America during the American Revolution. We learn about things like military shock and awe campaigns. That was a term that got thrown around a lot in the beginning of the Iraq invasion in 2003. The administration as well as the media outlets talked about shock and awe operations, hit them hard, hit them fast, scare the enemy into not wanting to fight. That wasn't something that was new to 21st century warfare. That's a tactic that's been around for a while, and that was a tactic that the British Army was using to kind of subjugate the colonies, bring them back under control. And as Paulsen shows in this story, they didn't care so much about only hitting military targets. Partly that was because the revolution was comprised of volunteer soldiers, Minutemen, guys that could look like your average Joe, like the common working man. And so the Brits like, well, if you're going to fight this way, we're just going to hit anybody and everybody, and we don't care what happens. The story is about a young man named Sam, who's, I believe he's 13 in the beginning of this book, and he lives out on the western frontier of the continental colonies, and he likes hanging out in the woods, doing some hunting, doing some exploring, kind of being in tune with nature, not really in a hippie way, but more in the way that's common in a lot of Gary Paulsen's narratives, whether they're his fictions or his biographies. He writes a lot about characters that get out into nature to learn and observe and to grow personally, because that's really what his own life has been about. And so he writes a lot of characters that go through that. Well, while Sam is out exploring in the woods, he sees some sign over the horizon, sees a smoke cloud coming from the direction of where he knows his family's homestead to be. He goes there and he finds out that his parents have hopefully been kidnapped by a British shock and awe campaign, but might be dead. Nevertheless, he's going to take up the trail using the things that he's learned out in the woods to try to chase them down and save them. He does find out eventually that his parents were spared because when the Brits came in, the commanding officer saw that Sam's father owned a chess set. And he's like, hey, if I don't kill this guy, if I just imprison him and bring him along, we can play chess at the end of every day, and that can entertain me. Ultimately that's where the entertainment saves comes in. We take entertainment for granted here in the digital age because just about anything we want is available at our fingertips for free. If it's not free, it's very inexpensive. We can access very costly productions for a very low monthly fee on all of these streaming services. And even if we're not paying for a streaming service explicitly, if we're paying for monthly Wi-Fi access in our homes, we can get stuff like this, like YouTube. We can get, anything that's out there. For that reason, we do not really understand what it was like to acquire entertainment in eras past. And again, Paulsen explains why that would have been a motivating factor for sparing somebody, as if they were useful to you in a way that nobody else was. As Sam goes on his adventure to try to save his parents, he runs across an early colonial spy ring. The Culper spies were a real such ring, but there were other efforts of early American espionage that Paulsen kind of plays with in the narrative. I'm not going to give it away. I'm not going to give away the ending of the story because it's worth the price of discovery, and it's not a very, thick book or substantial book. Paulsen's not a guy that wastes a lot of words or spends a lot of time out in the weeds. He's there to tell you his story, and then let you do what you will with it and get on with your life. I would highly recommend it. Like I said, it was one of my best reads of 2013. Not just for the exciting narrative or for the interesting historical tidbits, but both. I can't think of another book that I've read that follows that same format. A couple of them over here, like Scott Westerfeld's Leviathan trilogy, relies on afterwards to explain the historical details that were real and what changes he made for his historical fantasy narrative right there. But never one that changes, from chapter to chapter, and at the end of every chapter there's, like I showed you, a bit of historical fact to color what was really happening. So go ahead to your local library, or you can pick up an inexpensive copy of it online, wherever it is that you like to get books, and check out Woods Runner. I'm going to close this one out by doing something I haven't done yet, and that is by making a recommendation of one of my own titles briefly. This is probably my most popular title to date, and it is called Kill the Beast. I wrote this story kind of as a joke initially. About 5 years back, I took my wife for our anniversary to go see a live version of Beauty and the Beast at the Smith Center in Las Vegas. And the actor portraying Gaston in that version of the play was, he kind of had this surfer bro accent, and he put a unique twist on the character that I really enjoyed. And I've always liked the musical numbers that feature Gaston, not just in the animated version, but in the other stage version. I saw one in the 6th grade that my parents took me to that I really enjoyed. Anyway, I jokingly thought, what if Gaston was the protagonist, as he should be? And then I eventually wrote a story that was kind of more based on Gabrielle Suzanne Barbeau's original tale written in the 1700s. But there were some elements that Disney also drew on for theirs. But basically it's the arrogant savage woodsman character is the protagonist of a story in a similar setting against a similar backdrop. If you want to find it on Audible, I was able to get an excellent narrator. His name is Jean-Michel Georges, a native Parisian, to do the narration and the accents and pronounce all the French words to perfection. I even hired an editor for this one who had spent some time in France and was able to go over the text and make sure that my translations were done well. I don't have lengthy passages or sentences that are written in French, but words and expressions thrown in here and there to kind of give color to the setting. But the difference between the audio version and the print version is, let me see if I can jump to one of the illustrations here. I also did the illustrations. The model here was my friend Danielle, who had a very convenient French-sounding name. I had the naming rights to a character in a charity auction several years ago for a friend of mine, and Danielle's mother bought those rights and named named my character after her daughter. This is another drawing in here, but what was one of the best ones? This is, let me see if I can find it. Here we go. Gautier La Rue, talking about Gautier's heartache and so on and so forth. But there is, a whole bunch of other elements that you would expect out of a Beauty and the Beast story, including the eponymous beast itself. But that's it for this week. So check out Woods Runner, and if you would, check out Kill the Beast. And as I said at the beginning, thank you for watching and subscribing, and I will see you all next time. Peace.